So far we have talked a little bit about pathos and logos and how the two are different from each other. And at this point in the article, the author begins to go into how they're similar and talk about different theories relating to their interactions. And he begins by doing this by talking about how one of the things that any rhetorical situation has to address are the values and beliefs that the audience holds. These values and beliefs are often not purely rational forces. They have other things motivating them as well. I think one of the best examples you can use for this are religious beliefs. The recent movie that just came out, Religulous, was talking all about the mania surrounding various world religions and sort of the ridiculous aspects affecting it. And yet at the same time, I don't believe anyone can say that religion is not a powerful force. It does a lot to direct people's lives, and it provides a very serious commentary for people and a way to focus their actions, to provide moral stability, all that sort of thing. So the author begins to discuss Aristotle to some degree, and I believe that Aristotle's view of virtue ethics is a very good example of how pathos and logos are related to each other. Now, virtue ethics states that in order for an action to be ethical, it must take into account the appropriateness of the action in the context it's being performed in. Now, if an action has to be appropriate to be moral, and appropriateness relates to a logical setting as well as an emotional setting, then we can see that any sort of action has to have an appeal to both sides. So, for example, let's say you're giving a speech about any topic at all. You have a very logical argument. It makes a lot of sense to you, and you're able to convey that to your audience. You need to have some sort of logical understanding of where your audience is coming from. So, for example, if you give this speech in a foreign country and they don't understand your language, it doesn't matter how eloquently you're able to express yourself, they still won't be able to follow you as well. On the other hand, let's say if you're addressing a funeral, for example, there may be something which you find quite funny about the proceeding, and there may be a perfectly logical reason for that. But that doesn't mean, based on the emotional connections that everyone else that's attending that funeral has towards the proceedings, that doesn't mean that it's an appropriate time to bring up whatever you thought was funny. Now, that also explains somewhat what Meyer was talking about and what Professor Arthos brought up at the beginning of class, where he said that rhetoric is a theory of consequences. Those consequences are not simply logical consequences or physical consequences, something like if you throw a ball, it will behave under the laws of gravity, but there are also emotional consequences as well. And that really involves empathizing with the people that are being addressed, viewing what you're saying not from your perspective but from theirs, and using that ability in order to craft what you're saying in a way that it's relatable to those you're addressing. The part of the article that I'm talking about ended with a discussion of how the it ended with where Aristotle ends up in his virtue ethics. So it ends with an idea that the two of these are in dialectic relationship with one another. Neither one supersedes the other, and yet both are equally important for making any sort of point.